I spent nearly a month traveling and skiing around Europe last winter, and it was potentially the most life-changing trip that I've ever been on. I visited 4 different countries, skied at 9 different resorts, and ate some of the best food, skied some of the best powder, and saw the most spectacular mountains that I've ever seen. And this is a trip that I would recommend to absolutely anybody, no matter your skill level. However, we definitely did make some mistakes while we were planning this trip, and I want to share everything that I wish I had known. From packing essentials to where we went, how we got there, what we did. I'll finish up with my rapid fire top 10 tips that will help you have the best trip ever. Let's start with packing essentials. I packed 2 pairs of skis for this month-long trip. The first pair is a pair of carving skis, and this is pretty essential because if you've been following weather patterns in Europe over the past few winters, you'll have seen that there just has not been a lot of consistent deep snowfall, so you probably will not be skiing powder for 100% of your trip. I did also bring a pair of powder skis because I was hoping for powder and planning for some freeride skiing as well, and these 2 pairs of skis were perfect for the conditions that I encountered. If you're planning to do any off-piste skiing at all, you'll need to bring avalanche gear or rent it while you're there because off-piste terrain is not avalanche controlled in the same way that it is in North America. So if you're going off-piste, even if you're staying in bounds, you'll need this gear. If you're familiar with any European ski resorts, I'd love to hear in the comments whether you agree with my takes and whether there are any that I've missed that are more off the beaten path. So first off, I want to talk about getting to Europe. I typically fly into Munich, and I find it to be the most central, to have the most flight options from the US, and typically ends up being cheaper to fly into than some of the other airports. I flew into Munich, and the first stop on my trip was Dolomiti Superski in Italy. So Dolomiti Superski is a collection of 12 different ski resorts, all interconnected under one pass, giving you access to over 400 different lifts. To get there, we did the roughly 3 to 3.5 hour drive from Munich to Alta Badia. We spent 5 nights and 4 days exploring the network of ski resorts, including Alta Badia, Val Gardena, and Cortina. Dolomiti Superski is on the Icon Pass, so if you have the pass, you have access to either 5 or 7 days, depending on which pass you have, and this gets you access to the full network of resorts. No matter where you go within the Dolomites, you are going to be surrounded by the most stunning, spectacular views that you have ever seen. The mountains are very dramatic, and they're this really light-colored rock that you don't really see anywhere else. We stayed in a hut on Alta Badia, which was incredibly special. We got to see some of the coolest sunrises and sunsets, and throughout the 4 days of skiing, we had some of the most incredible food that I've ever had on a ski hill, or honestly anywhere. For me, the highlight of Dolomiti Superski are all of the independent family-owned huts that are throughout the mountains, and they have such a family-owned cozy feeling to them. You just feel like you're being welcomed in and experiencing their culture. Dolomiti Superski is also known for their ski tours or ski routes where you're basically following signs to complete the route. So one of these is the Celerando, which is a day-long ski tour and takes you all the way around the mountains, touching 4 different resorts. And we also did the Hidden Valley, which is a 10-kilometer long ski run with horses at the bottom that pull you out. So I would say this is a great option for a family-friendly trip, or if you have a group of friends with varying skill levels. If you're looking for perfect groomers, a bit of slower pace, delicious food, a lot of culture, this is the place for you. If you're looking for killer off-piste skiing, you're going to want to wait for the next resort on this list. After Italy, our next stop was St. Anton. St. Anton is another one of those resorts that's part of a conglomerate of resorts. It's a really big network and a huge amount of acreage, and it's located just about an hour outside of Innsbruck in Austria. This is where I want to pause and mention our first major mistake of the trip. So we took the train from Italy to Austria, and getting from the Dolomites to St. Anton is not actually that far of a distance, but the way that we did it was not direct. It was so roundabout, and it was very challenging. So we had to book a private transfer to get from the resort in the Dolomites to the nearest train station in the valley. That in and of itself was about a 30-minute drive. Once we got to the train station, we had to then wait for the train. We got on the first train, we took that for a ways, and then we had to transfer to another train to get into Austria. The major challenge here was that since I had 2 pairs of skis, I had a very large ski bag. I also had a large duffel with all of my clothes. I had a big backpack and my ski boots. So I was lugging this around the train stations and had to very quickly make the connection from one train to the next train while lugging all of my equipment through the train station. And it was so exhausting, so physically challenging. I was stressed, I was sweaty, I was cranky, and it was just not great. In the end, we ended up getting to Innsbruck, and in Innsbruck, we rented a car to drive to St. Anton. So really, in hindsight, we wish that we had just rented a car in Munich at the start of the trip, driven to Italy, and then we could drive to St. Anton from there. Rental cars in Munich are much less expensive than in Innsbruck, so the costs that we would have had from renting the car for a couple of extra days would have been made up in the difference in the price of the rental car. The drive from Innsbruck to St. Anton is super easy. You're just on a major highway, and St. Anton is right off the highway, so there's no crazy roads or anything like that. And once we did arrive, St. Anton was absolutely the highlight of the trip for me. It snowed anywhere from 30 to 50 centimeters overnight, both of the nights we were there, and then cleared up in the morning. So when we were skiing during the day, it was blue sky, fresh powder. The powder was so light and fluffy and just completely like blow or pow. And the terrain that we skied was definitely the best terrain of the trip. It was much more freeride oriented, although there are plenty of groomers there. There are much more options for freeride that's really easily accessible from the lifts. So you can really just do lap after lap of freeride runs without having to hike or take multiple lifts to get a loop in. This is a spot where it's important to remember that if you are skiing off piste, you need to be carrying your avalanche gear. You need to check the freeride boards, which are around the mountain and will show you the avalanche risk. So you need to be making smart, informed decisions. And if you've never been to the resort before, I highly recommend hiring a guide who will show you all of the spots around the resort where the best snow is, the best terrain is, and make sure that you're kind of mitigating your risk throughout the day. St. Anton is not on the major passes, so we did have to buy day passes for each of the 3 days that we skied here, but the conditions were so spectacular and the skiing was so good, it was absolutely worth it. The town and the après scene in St. Anton is very lively. It's a spot that's really known for its après scene, so you have these really famous bars that are up kind of on the hill as you're skiing down. On our last day here, we did a big tour of the other Arlberg resorts, including Lek and Zers and some of the others, which was pretty much a full day tour, but it was really cool to get to see some of the other resorts and kind of see the scenery, the different towns, and the different vibe of the resorts. I would still say that St. Anton was my favorite spot as far as skiing, but some of the other towns had a really cool vibe. So St. Anton is definitely a spot to check out if you're really looking for a freeride vibe, and also if you're interested in an après scene. If you're looking for a quiet, sleepy ski town, this is maybe not the one for you. But I would check out some of the other nearby towns that I just mentioned, or some of the others on this list. From St. Anton, we headed into Switzerland to St. Moritz. The drive from St. Anton to St. Moritz is just over 2 hours, and it's a little bit more of a kind of windy back road. While we were in St. Moritz, we were only there for 2 days, and the snow coverage wasn't that great while we were there, so we pretty much had to stick to the groomers, and I feel like we didn't really get to see all of the terrain that St. Moritz has to offer. It was so sunny and so beautiful while we were there, and it was really cool to just experience the vibe of the mountain. The town is also obviously so iconic, so it was really great to get to walk around. The food options are great. We had our first cheese fondue while we were here, which is a Switzerland classic. We did also hit up the town rec center, which was so much more fun than I thought it was going to be. If you're traveling with family or with children, or honestly, even if it's just a group of adults like we were, this is a really great option for an after skiing activity. For our next stop, we headed to Wengen. So from St. Moritz to get to Wengen is a pretty long drive. You're basically going to the other side of Switzerland. Obviously, Switzerland is not that big, so it was about 4 hours, but this is still where I think the sequencing of our resorts was maybe not ideal. So we did want to head to Wengen because there was a super famous, iconic ski race happening there, and actually KJ's younger brother was racing, so we wanted to go there and watch him race. Wengen itself is a spectacular Swiss town, and it's definitely a must-see. It's actually a no-car town, so you basically have to park in the valley and then take a train to get up to the village. The village itself is just like perched on the side of the mountain, and it's so cute and so quaint. Although if you're there during the ski race, it gets pretty packed and pretty rowdy. Once you get up there, you have these stunning views of the Eiger, which is a super iconic mountain. Some of the other options while you're here is to stay on the other side of the mountain in Grindelwald, and you can also ski on the other side of the valley in an area called Murin. We didn't have a chance to go over there because of the ski race, but I've heard that it has more varied terrain and some more off-piste skiing. After skiing only 1 day in Wengen, we headed over to Engelberg. Engelberg is another super special Swiss town, and this one is actually a little bit more accessible, so you can really just take the train from Lucerne to Engelberg. So if you're looking for a spot where you don't actually have to drive at all and you can just take the train right to the ski town, this is one you should consider. Engelberg is pretty close to Wengen, and it also has really incredible views, and this is a spot that's a little bit more known for freeride and their freeride terrain. And I would say the only downside of this resort is that since it is so accessible by train, it tends to get a little bit more busy on the weekends with tourists. After Engelberg, we headed all the way back across to Austria to Kitzbühel. Again, this was absolutely not the most efficient way to do it, and I would say if you want to hit Kitzbühel, definitely do it kind of on the first half of this trip. That being said, Kitzbühel was another incredible highlight of the trip. So while we were here, we had the opportunity to watch the Hahnenkamm downhill race, which is essentially like the Super Bowl of ski racing. It's one of the most challenging and most infamous ski races. So if you're ever interested in checking out a World Cup ski race, this is absolutely the one that you should go to. It was extra special for us because we got to watch the Canadians Jack Crawford and Cam Alexander come first and third, which again is a huge deal. And we got to celebrate with them and their families. And I will just say that Austrians really know how to après. If you have a chance to go to the Londoner, I would highly recommend. Kitz is also on the Icon Pass, so it made it really easy to just go up and ski for a couple of hours. This is another pretty incredible, large, sprawling ski resort. So there's so much area that you can ski in, and you can really kind of explore over the mountain, stop in their little huts, have some really great Austrian food. Unfortunately, it is a little bit lower elevation. So while we were there wasn't actually a ton of snow, but we did have a great time just exploring and skiing around. After Kitzbühel, we huffed it on over all the way to France. Again, this was not the most efficient way to do things, and I would sequence the resorts entirely differently if I could do it again. First up after Kitzbühel was Chamonix. This was a nearly 8-hour drive, so it took us pretty much a full day of driving to get there. We didn't get to ski that day. We pretty much just dedicated the entire day to driving, and we only got to ski one day in Chamonix, but it was absolutely worth it to make a stop there. Chamonix is another one of those spots that has multiple mountains and a lot of area that you can ski, but these mountains are a little bit less connected, so you kind of have to choose for a day a certain mountain and kind of ski at that mountain for the day. We skied at Grand Monte, which is specifically known for freeride, and it had snowed the night that we got there, so it was a powder day and it was so much fun to explore. The terrain here is so cool, but we did keep it pretty low-key because we didn't know the area and the avalanche risk was pretty high, so I would love to go back and just explore, maybe with a guide. If you're here and you do have time, a bucket list item is to ski the Vallée Blanche, which is the longest lift access ski run in the world. We also found that accommodation here was not that expensive, so this is definitely a place that I would come and stay a little bit longer. From Chamonix, we headed over to Val D'Isere, where I was doing a photo and video shoot with the Rossignol crew, which was a really cool experience, but sadly, since I was pretty occupied throughout the day, I didn't actually get to explore that much. I did think that the town of Val D'Isere was incredibly cool and had a great vibe. I would love to come back here and spend more time, and the terrain also seemed really cool. KJ did go off and do a lot more exploring, and he had a really great time and highly recommends this place. From Val D'Isere, KJ drove me to Geneva. He was going on back to Austria, but he dropped me off at the airport there, and I flew from Geneva back to Salt Lake. So as you can probably tell, this trip was crazy cool, but also logistically pretty challenging. So here are my 10 tips to make it run a little bit more smoothly. So if you're planning to rent a car, do it in Munich and not in Innsbruck to save a little bit of money. If you're staying at one resort, you probably won't need a car, but if you're connecting a bunch like we did, you probably are going to want one. If you're planning just to take transit, I highly recommend just bringing one bag. Just bring one pair of skis, one ski bag, and try to get all of your clothes in that ski bag, and it's going to make it so much easier to navigate the different train stations and get on and off the trains. Also, not all of these towns are easily accessible by train, so make sure you check into where the train stations actually are and if you need transfers to get to the resort. Switzerland tends to be a little bit more expensive, so if you're looking to cut costs, I would stay in Austria for a similar vibe that's a little bit more budget friendly. On a similar note, traveling with the Icon Pass and sticking to Icon destinations, or you could do the same thing with Epic or any of the other passes, did help us save a lot of costs because we weren't spending money on lift passes. If you're looking for freeride destinations, I would check out Saint Anton, Chamonix, Val d'Isere, or Tignes. Verbier is another really classic freeride option, but we just didn't have time to go there on our trip. If you're looking for the ultimate ski vacation with great vibes, great food, great views, I would check out Dolomiti Superski. And if you're looking for après, you're gonna love Saint Anton in Austria or nearby Ischgl, or Val d'Isere or some of the others in France. Overall, I think this was potentially too many stops for one single trip, so if you're looking for quality, I would recommend spending at least 3 to 4 nights in each place. And if you did want to be based out of one spot for the whole trip, I think Innsbruck is a great spot. It has an airport, it's really central to a lot of different resorts, and it has this really cool, unique ski city vibe. And if you are looking to move around throughout the trip like we did, I recommend grouping the resorts a little bit differently. As I mentioned, there's a little bit more of an east and a west grouping, and you might want to split these up into 2 separate trips so you can have a little bit more quality time in each. If you made it to the end of this video, I would love to hear if you've been to any of these resorts and if you agree with how I captured them, especially given that I was only at each one for a couple of days. I would love to hear if there's any I missed and if there's any that are off the beaten path that you would recommend. And if you're planning a trip, I would love to hear whether this was helpful. If you like this video, I would really appreciate if you would give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.